Okay, I think it's after 2 now, so I'm going to get this show on the road. And welcome all. I'm Tony Freund. I'm the editorial director at First Dibs, and I'm really delighted. Oh, thank you. And I'm really delighted. I do a lot of panels. I've never been so happy about doing one than the one I'm doing today, because we have extraordinary quartet of talents, and I adore and respect all of them. So it's really, this is going to be fun for me. So I'm glad you're all here to share in the fun. I'm also very happy to be back. This is the second time First Dibs has partnered or participated in the Salon Conversation series. It's really a wonderful fair, as you all know, if you are coming from it or heading back into it or have been here before. So it's we're thrilled to partner with Salon. So first, we've got this great panel. We've got Cristina Grajales and Paul Donzella, who are right. It's that kind of day. You're welcome to cheer and do whatever you want. No raspberries, though. No heckling. So they're two of New York City's most respected dealers. They're longstanding friends of First Dibs and the Salon. And if you haven't already, check out their extraordinary booths inside the drill hall after this talk. Because I'm not just saying that because they're near me and could push me over if I didn't. They really are, I think, standouts in a pretty stellar showing of dealers. Okay, and then we've got Nicole Hollis, who's in town from San Francisco, so lucky us, right? And Damon Liss, who traveled up from Tribeca for us. So not only are Nicole and Damon working at the very pinnacle of the interior design world, creating elegant, enveloping, and timeless environments, they're among the more, I'd say, object-driven designers I admire, taking an almost curatorial approach to the ways they lay out rooms and populate their spaces with a mix of vintage and contemporary pieces. At First Dibs, we often talk about how we're part of what we call a virtuous circle. And I think that's especially true of Introspective, the weekly digital magazine that I have the good fortune to oversee. To a large degree, our storytelling focuses on the extraordinary objects our thousands of dealers from around the world post to the site each week. And it also highlights the work of leading interior designers who are particularly skilled at curating and deploying those objects and others like them in creative and inspiring ways. These stories then reach our large consumer audience, who are shown vivid proof of the life-enhancing and home-enhancing value of beautiful things, whether antique, vintage, or just out of the artisan's studio. So our stories also serve to showcase the value proposition of working with the talented interior designers. So given that context, I'm excited to embark on today's topic of discussion, which is Sublime Synergies, the magic that's made when top interior designers and dealers collaborate. Designers rely on dealers to seek out and champion exciting raw material that they then use to compose their spaces. And dealers rely on designers to show the world how these unique, expressive, and sometimes expensive pieces can tip a merely beautiful room into the realm of the sublime. Nicole and Cristina are frequent collaborators, and Damon and Paul also work together on a multitude of projects. And there are a lot of these images are on this carousel, the slideshow, whatever we call this, whatever the technological term for the images behind us are, slideshow. So I'm excited to explore how those particular relationships inform the work that they all do. But first, I want to ask the designers a more general question, which is, when you walk into a gallery, any gallery, or given our setting, a fair booth, where does your eye go first? As a sort of civilian, I'm sort of always curious how the more practiced eye enters a room filled with beautiful objects and what seems to capture your attention. So, Nicole, do you want to start? Or?
Sure. Where does my eye go? Well, I think it usually is the biggest piece is usually the piece I look at the first. But lighting is always where my eye goes. I think it's kind of jewelry in my world. So lighting. So always looking up or looking at the walls, at sconces, chandeliers. That's usually where my eye goes first.
And Damon?
I think it's a little bit different when I'm in a gallery. So typically when we're going to a gallery, we have an agenda that we're looking for a specific piece. So when I'm entering a gallery, I frequently have tunnel vision and I really see almost nothing except a beeline for that piece that we're seeing. And once we have that evaluation, then my eyes open up to everything. It's similar to unpeeling of an onion where you would see, all different pieces. I mean, I know that I've been in, Paul's gallery and I've said, Paul, that piece is amazing. I haven't seen, that in a long time. He's like, Damon, it's been here 2 years. So it's just funny how your eye sees things differently each time you go in and experience it.
So it's not necessarily the shiniest object in the room or the biggest object, but sometimes it is. Let's sort of step back a little bit. How did you two kind of first venture into the world of design? And were you always so focused on the object, decorative art history? Is that how or did that come later?
Well, I started in design when I was younger, recently after college, and I was fortunate enough to be able to buy an apartment not in the city, and I renovated it and had a great experience, ended up selling it and doing very well with it, and that kind of tipped my curiosity to get into that world. So that for me was kind of the very beginning. As far as the evolution of finding carefully curated pieces, I think that is definitely a process. I think very early on, especially in one's career, you don't really have access to being able to acquire those pieces for clients. You still find incredible pieces, but you have to be a little bit more crafty and figuring out ways that those pieces can really stand out. But from working with dealers like Paul and lots of dealers, you do learn the amazing history of these pieces, and now it's an incredibly important part of our design is finding each and every piece and how that fits within the bigger context.
Mm-hmm. Interesting.
Yeah, I started out here in New York, FIT, and when I was studying in school, I was working for an architecture firm, training in interior design, and luckily, because I had worked at a firm, I had access to some galleries and showrooms, and I spent a lot of time with Ralph Pucci, and learning about Andre Putman, and this is before the internet. So really as a student to be able to educate your eye and visit galleries and showrooms. So Ralph taught me a lot. I think R & Company, they just started out in Brooklyn, so I'd spend time looking at some mid-century pieces, just educating my eye. So I think it's just about hitting museums, learning and self-educating, I was very architecturally inspired, so I think like Donald Judd was a big influence of my work, and I think looking at museums, shows, and galleries. I did a summer abroad in Paris, so I got to visit museums and galleries and behind the scenes, and also studied history of fashion, which also informed my work. So I think early days, all of these things coming at me, fashion, interiors, architecture, and interior design, brought me to learning about these beautiful galleries, educating my eye, and then now I just ask Cristina, is this good? Is this not good? Sometimes you just need to, you think you see something that is, maybe not that good, and then you phone a friend and they're like, this is why it's good, or this is why it's not good. Wow. So I think it's really nice to keep learning and asking questions.
That's interesting. So I want to flip the question now to Paul and Cristina. Maybe your origin story, and also did you come to what you do through interior design? To what degree did interior design, images that you'd seen of objects displayed in beautiful rooms, how did that inspire you early in your careers?
Interior design, or just life?
Or just a beautiful,
just life.
Beautiful light, yeah.
Just beautiful spaces, just nature, just being around harmonious spaces and understanding that this is what I wanted to do with my life. Mm-hmm. Not particularly interior design, just taking into account the whole ensemble in front of me and trying to work in that environment.
Paul?
My turn.
Your turn.
Yeah, I started out being drawn to objects and furniture pieces specifically, and I would tell the story like I was working in a restaurant and I would walk to work and leave early to stop. There were galleries on the way on my way to work. So I would leave early to stop and sort of look and see what was in them. And then I started getting period magazines and then started seeing like how these pieces were used in a context of a room and in an entire space. And so that was definitely part of the learning process for me, was, you know, not just falling in love with the pieces, but then having the opportunity to see, you know, how they were used in the context. And that was extremely inspiring.
And that was back in Tribeca, right? So there were
Yeah,
it was all sort of
Tribeca,
mid-century
Soho.
modern dealers, mostly. Yeah.
Yeah, I was living in the East Village, working in Tribeca, and I would, you know, walk through Soho, and, you know, Lafayette Street had like 6 galleries that were all mid-century at the time.
Right.
Yeah.
So do you remember the two interior designers who are here? Can you tell me the first time you walked into a gallery? Well, I mean, you said it may have been Ralph Pucci, but that where a dealer really changed your life in a way, or showed you, you know, lit up something in a way you'd never seen before.
Marie Moss.
Oh, okay.
I think Moss was...
Somebody has to applaud Marie Moss in this room.
Sorry.
It's pretty amazing.
I was like, for me, that was life-changing, I think, to have access to all of those designers and to see the way they displayed all the designers, the shows that they had. It was real education every time I went, and I went as often as I could.
I really don't have a pivotal moment where there was one individual experience. I do feel still that every single time I enter a gallery, I'm moved by something, and I don't know what it's going to be. When I was in Paul's recently, and there's a Max Ingrid mirror, that you see images of it, and it's just not the same as when you see something like that in person. Cristina, I came over to her opening, and, you know, the rugs were incredible, and you go through these spaces, and I don't know what's going to happen or why it's going to happen. But I'd say when you go to these exceptional galleries, and everyone you've mentioned, you know, Nicole, whether it's Ralph Pucci or whether it's R, you know, every time I go into there, there's something that's unexpected that stands out in a different way than I anticipated.
I was always amazed when people, and as a journalist, you know, I did a lot of, I went to fairs all the time, and you'd sort of meet these other journalists who would say, oh, this fair, there's nothing new there, you know, I've seen it all before, and I'd think, really, there's nothing, you're so blasé, you're so jaded that there's nothing there that couldn't excite you? I mean, I always find something exciting to see regardless. So how about, do you guys, going back into history, do you remember the first time you all ever met each other? Or Cristina, Nicole?
Cristina, you tell it.
So I was very lucky to have been invited to a dinner in San Francisco that Emilia invited me from First Dibs, and I was sitting next to Nicole's husband, Louis. And I was very lucky because he was so accessible, so wonderful, so funny, so kind, talking about the business and how you go about your business and the kind of pieces that you respond to. And I was thinking, that sounds amazing. He also said something very funny. I asked Nicole permission. He mentioned that Nicole loves to go to sleep early. And I was thinking, me too. So I really want to meet this woman.
And it's coming on 9 p.m., so we better make it happen soon.
We can do business during the day and then go to sleep early. But it was the beginning of a wonderful friendship. Yes. Thank you, Nicole, for your support. And then Paul. I mean, I know Paul for the longest time, and Damon has been a wonderful client too. So I'm lucky to be surrounded by a lot of love and support.
You remember your first
I don't remember
site?
the first.
It was definitely neighborhood driven.
Yeah.
I live and work in Tribeca. Paul's gallery was on White Street for years. We used to pop in. It had to be 15 plus years ago that we wandered in the gallery. Paul was always gracious to take the time to chat with me, teach us, really just always was explaining pieces from the very beginning, even before we were big clients. And Cristina, the first time we met, we were seated together at a First Dibs dinner, actually.
Oh, there you go. First Dibs again.
You guys.
That's Amazing.
More
Yeah.
dinners.
First dips, please.
And-
More dinners.
And I'll say when I first got into the business, Cristina was running 1950, and she was always so kind to me. And I remember you gave me recommendations for movers, which, I mean, Pacho, which he moves me in and out of this fair every year, you know? Yeah,
You have to help each other. You know?
absolutely.
It's all about collaboration.
Right, well, that's a great segue into the topic today, collaboration. So what are kind of the ways, what have you guys, Cristina, Nicole, what have you taught each other? What's kind of the lessons that, that you learned by just talking, working through a project, shooting ideas back and forth?
Well, as I was telling Nicole the other day, I think that the relationship between a designer and a gallerist is a very special relationship. It's basically based on trust. That's, for me, the most important. That's the beginning of the relationship. So Nicole sometimes will come up with these ideas that her clients would like to do. And maybe we haven't done that particular piece. So it's a wonderful way for us to explore ways of doing new pieces and being brave and embarking on new ideas that ultimately will be beautiful for Nicole, for the client, and for us, very exciting at the same time. So we push each other. Is that back and forth? That's what makes us better, in my opinion.
I fully agree with that. I mean, trust is such a key element, and also, you know, like I'll hear about certain designers who people ask me, oh, do you work with them? And, you know, it takes a while. You develop relationships, and I know the designers tend to like to sort of go back to the same people that they have relationships with, and you know, sort of, Damon's always, you know, calling me, asking me about certain things that he's looking for that I might not have, but maybe I can source. And yeah, and it's funny you were talking about, you know, going to bed early being this connector. Like, we're texting each other at like 6:15 in the morning.
My
yeah,
favorite.
it's so funny. Yeah.
So that's the key to success in this industry. Go to bed early and wake
Go
up
to bed
early.
early. Exactly.
We can end that discussion. So now let's hear from Nicole and Damon. So what do you?
I think to, you know, follow up with the trust, I think, as you said, designers use the same galleries over and over again, and it's because of trust. And I think if we're going to embark on, say, a new commission for a client and a new piece that maybe is never done before, there has to be that trust that, you know, it's going to be expensive, it might take a long time. We are reassuring the client that this is, you know, a very important collaboration, that bring this artist into their project and educating them on the value of that, and then bringing that to fruition and installation. And so the client is trusting us. And so we're bringing that to our galleries and saying, we have the trust, you know, from our clients to pursue this. So it could, you know, your reputation is on the line, the gallery's reputation, the artist's reputation. So everyone has to feel safe. And I think that's important.
I mean, I feel like I rely on Paul for a lot more than just what's in his gallery. I mean, Paul is generous to the point where if I see a piece that I'm not sure of, he's happy to collaborate with me, comment on it. We talk about every detail on vintage pieces, as how much touch-up, how much refinishing, what do you want to do with it. All those things are so important when you're investing in important vintage pieces. And again, the trust to know that Paul is always going to do the right thing in regards to helping me in those situations, it's been an incredible relationship.
I want to add one more thing. I would like to add also patience and flexibility. So one of the big commissions that we did with Nicole was a very beautiful big rug. And when it arrived to San Francisco, it was the wrong color.
Oh boy.
And I thought that Nicole was going to kill us. And I was so scared. But Nicole, you were so wonderful and very kind and very understanding that something got lost in translation between New York and India and the colors. And we managed, but thank you.
I actually liked the new color. And I thought, my team were so afraid to tell me that the color was wrong, and they were trying to hide the situation from me. Cristina reaches out and goes, I'm so sorry about the color. And I'm like, what are you talking about? And then they're like, oh, here's the photos of the rug. And I was like, oh, but it's so beautiful. I think it still will work really well in the project. Let's keep it and tell Cristina she doesn't have to make a new one. And she said, no, I want to make it right, so you let us keep the other one until the new one arrived. But everyone was pleased. But it was just an example of,
But again, that's the relationship that you build with the Nicole. I was so scared, but then I was comfortable enough that we were able to fix it and make a beautiful room.
Yeah, I think that's a big thing. Damon knows that, we're all humans and mistakes happen. And Damon knows that if I, mess something up that we're doing that's expensive, he knows I'm going to stand behind it and take care of it. And, so that's a big reason why the trust is so important.
Yeah, we have no fear when dealing with our trusted dealers, meaning we know that they'll always have our back, and even when it's our fault. Sometimes we'll specify something that we make a mistake on, and when that happens, it's even more important that you can rely on your dealers to help you out of that situation. There's definitely times when our clients have approved something and they change their minds and they don't like something, and it's very easy for a dealer just to say, well, you signed off on it and you approved it. But when you have these great relationships, there's always a solution with them, and I'm always confident that we come to something that makes sense for everybody.
Great. I want to hear from Paul and Cristina about your, just beyond Damon and Nicole, sort of what you enjoy about working with interior designers. What do they bring to the sort of process, and how do they work that's different from your consumer clients or civilian clients?
I mean, it's exciting for us when interior designers and architects come into our gallery, or collectors, because that's the work that we do. You work with this, you represent these artists, you are trying to develop their careers, and you want to be able to educate your clients and tell them about these incredible new designers that you're working with, and you want to share your passion, you want to share their work. And you can only do it if you have an audience. If you don't have an audience, then you can't really, it's about education. I love the educating part of my job. And that's what we do when all these people come into our gallery.
Yeah, I agree. It's great when sort of end users and retail people come in and you get to, and they're enthusiastic, and you get to sort of, educate them, as Cristina was saying. But with the designers, there's a step of the education that's already taken care of. So it's you can be sort of more efficient with them, and a lot of times the designers that come in are repeat customers. So there's already a relationship, and there's already a synergy, and it's like a next level, professional to professional kind of thing. That's always really fun, and you can sort of give them more behind the scenes stuff. Yeah, I like that a lot.
You're also educating your clients. I mean, or your interior designers. Ostensibly, you sell something to Nicole, much as a fine art gallery wants to sell to a museum or sell to a noted collector. Then your piece is going into, your artist's piece is going into a beautiful space that will likely be published in a book, or so it's another way to, we talk about the virtuous circle, another way to advance your.
But I also think that working with interior designers like Nicole or Damon, who know what they're doing, it teaches us about space, about exhibition, how to, because everybody has a different way of exhibiting a piece. So it's exciting to see how Nicole sees our pieces, or how Damon sees our pieces. How are you going to use it? What is the purpose? How does the room look like? What else is in the room? That's what's exciting for me, is the whole ensemble.
And then does it inform the way you actually curate your respective galleries, sort of thinking?
Definitely. Yeah. I've learned so much working with interior designers to not just look at the, not just look at the piece in the way that I came to it originally, but to see other practical sides of it and use, the way things get used. And, I've fallen in love with a 9-foot cabinet. It's like, well, there's not a lot of use for a 9-foot cabinet, so you better really love it, But yeah, I've been informed so much by working with interior designers.
I even know, Cristina, your booth is designed by Young Ha today, right?
I decided to have fun with this booth, and Young is a new, she bought her house is right across from mine in the country. And we have become really dear friends, and it was really fun to just say, what about you doing this for us? And for her, it was so much fun. And actually, when she came on Wednesday, I was kind of having a nervous breakdown. I decided that the sofa was too big, the coffee table was too big, I was throwing a temper tantrum, couldn't figure out my booth, and I'm usually very good with my booths. But Young was very peaceful. She said, Cristina, don't worry, we'll figure it out. And I think that she created something so fresh for us. It was so fun to see her and her team in action. So it's part of it's also like Nicole and I were talking about this, is bringing joy into our work. How do we make it joyful? Especially now that there's so much going on in the world. It's like, let's bring joy into our lives. Let's bring joy into our spaces.
Definitely.
You often, we're sort of not talking about the client, or we haven't talked about the client yet, but often there's a third member in this love affair between the two. So tell me about the sort of dynamic of working with the client and how you two approach that, each of you approach that. And I don't know if there are any of your clients are in the room right now, so this is a cone of silence.
For me, I rely on the galleries to be the storytellers, right? So I feel like we are the people that bring clients to look at specific pieces, but I like having, like Paul, for instance, will tell the story of the pieces. And it's not just the education, it's just these pieces, have life to them. They're from specific places, whether it's a vintage piece that he found that was in a house in Milan, or whether it's an incredible artisan making a custom piece in France. It's that when you hear the passion from a gallerist talking about human beings that made this, it changes the entire dynamic of what that item is that you're looking at. So for me, that's one of the most important, aspects of the experience. I mean, when I just came the other day and you're telling me about these weavers and the rugs, and I mean, it's just, you can't help but be brought into it. It's a very different experience.
Yeah, when we're working with clients, we try to bring that story to them. So learning from Cristina about the artists and about their capabilities, but also having the opportunity to do maybe a studio visit to meet the artist or bring them to the gallery, understand more, meet Cristina, learn about the artist directly. They start to get a little more buy-in. They start to feel like this is a conversation they're a part of, instead of just looking at a photo of something and they have no personal connection. So we really try and bring them along in the story, bring them along in the commission if they're interested, and most are. And they really want to understand more and they want to educate themselves. So we feel like it's our job to sort of broker that relationship between the gallerist, the artist, and the client. Most clients are interested in learning about the pieces that are in their home, and then when they're living with it, they can bring that experience along and say, I remember when I chose this rug, and even though it came in the wrong color, I still love it. And, the client was there with us at Cristina's gallery and chose it herself, and we all discussed it. So I think, they really, and they was, not avoid the conversation about cost. So they're financing all of these beautiful projects and these beautiful commissions. And I think during COVID, I had a client call in a complete panic in the very beginning of lockdown, and she said, I just need to stop my project. It's like people are dying, and I feel like this is just too bougie to be building this house and buying these beautiful pieces when the world is at a standstill. And just being able to talk her down and say, but you really are employing thousands of artists and craftsmen and builders and, all these artisans that are commissioned to work on this house, and architects and designers, you know, of course I respect your decision, but realize that all of these people are relying on you, and in a good way, and you are supporting the arts in this way. And I think that was like, oh, you're right. Like if I pull out and just cancel, I think I'll be affecting lives even more. So I think just talking that through and really bring them along in the journey that we all get to have the best job in the world and meet these artists and designers, but really just educating them as well.
I remember at the beginning of COVID, we felt the same way at First Dibs. So, you know, how can we be telling these stories? The world seemed to be falling apart. People were losing their lives, their livelihood, and it was. We had that same idea. We had, you know, thousands of small business owners, you know, antiques dealers who, you know, if people weren't going into their shops before, they certainly weren't going now, and we needed to continue to, you know, promote them and tell the stories. To make sure that they could stay in business and continue to do the things that they do so well and love. I think also my job is so great because the dealers are such, you dealers are such amazing storytellers, and you have such great eyes. I mean, you're the ones who are finding these pieces, you know, rediscovering people who've maybe been forgotten, celebrating them in ways, and the material is expensive, right? And you can go to Crate and Barrel or something and buy something that, you know, that you can sit on or store your barware in for a fraction of the price. So it's very important to be able to tell the stories of why these things have value, why patina matters, why the maker's mark matters, you know, the hand of the maker. And so I love being able to give a platform to you amazing dealers. But I also loved in our designer profiles, we always do a thing at the end, quick picks, where you all sort of pick things on the site and then give us a sentence or two on why you love it, because I think people love to understand why something is special and why someone with such a refined eye, as Nicole and Damon have, why you gravitate to a certain piece, because there's a lot of, you know, really interesting material out there. So anyway, just a long way of saying I work with, you know, you make my job so easy because you're all such great storytellers and have such great sort of insights into all this material. So thank you. Let's now talk specifically. You've been seeing some beautiful rooms sort of behind you. Your collaborations are, you know, sort of are of a different nature. Sometimes you just walk in and you buy something off the floor. Other times you're in search of something, and you may go to Paul and Cristina and say, "Can you find me something like this?" And then, you know, frequently I imagine you've alluded to this already, you're commissioning pieces, actually working for site specific. So maybe, you know, I don't really like to talk directly to images, but maybe you each pair can sort of talk about one kind of fruitful collaboration, commission, where you had a blank space and you decided you were going to do something really wonderful with it.
I don't see, well, actually, Damon, do you want to, is there anything here?
That one was there.
Yeah. Go back one, or is that one good?
Amelia's the tech.
Who's got the remote control?
We should go to we could do the dining room, the Loger chandelier.
Sure. Or that's
This is a great one too.
Yeah.
We can start with this one. I'll start with it. Paul had reached out to me in the middle of this project, not knowing that I was actually sourcing for it at the time, and was really excited that he had just purchased this table in the middle, which is really a very special, coveted piece. He reached out to me. He showed me an image before he even got it into his gallery,
which I was planning to bring to Salon that year. It was going to be the centerpiece of my booth, and I was sort of bragging, like showing it off to Damon.
I was like, it's not making it to Salon.
And I remember telling Jill, who's the director of the fair, "Oh, I have this amazing piece," and then she knew it, and then later having to tell her, "Well, actually, I showed it to one client, and he bought it, and I'm not bringing it anymore."
It never even made it to your showroom.
It never made it to my gallery floor. Yeah. Yeah,
That's-
it went to restoration, and yeah.
Right.
And you
That's
took
great.
it somewhere to show your client. You didn't even want it to come to my store. You took it somewhere else.
We went to another
show it
vendor,
to
so our
them.
client liked to see everything in person, but we needed to consolidate things so we didn't, bounce all around the city.
Yeah.
So we used to take everything to Joseph Carini Carpets in Tribeca, and we used his space as a showroom to display all the furniture that we brought in to show them.
That's interesting.
It's good.
Right, so another
Nice space there.
fringe benefit of having a close collaboration is that you get first dibs on really special things.
And another thing that was funny about that too was it was a very expensive table, and it was maybe like the clients didn't know about it and they weren't familiar with it, but they loved it. But I think they were having a little bit of a price thing, and then all of a sudden another dealer had the same table in France that was bringing it to Art Basel. That was in his advertisement, his email blast. And so Damon priced that, and that was more expensive than mine. And so that was like a little help pushing it over the finish line.
Thank you, French dealer.
Great story. And now, Nicole, Cristina?
With Cristina, commissioning a couple of pieces. We have an image here of a cabinet that we commissioned for a project in Hawaii that we knew. I think if we keep going, that one on the far left.
Christophe Combe?
Christophe Combe, so a beautiful furniture maker and artist that Cristina represents, and so coming to her and saying, we need something that will work in Hawaii, so we use the clear glass, cast glass, and it really is part of the bar, so it holds all the glassware and barware. But we had this house was an older Hawaiian house that we remodeled, but it had that sort of niche in the middle, so we had the cabinet fabricated to fit. So really just coordinating with her gallery on commissioning the piece to be fabricated specifically for this project.
Is that the first time you've placed Christophe in Hawaii?
I don't think so.
Maybe so.
Maybe.
How about...
We'll never tell.
Yeah, right. For a custom commission, do you have a...
Yeah, there's a photo somewhere in there of a dining room that Damon did for a client in Dallas. And he really loves these plaster fixtures that Alexander Loger, who's an artist based in Paris that I show. But, because it was Texas, he needed a giant version. And it also was hanging, like it wasn't even sort of going into a ceiling. It was going onto a beam that was running over the table. So that was kind of a fun and interesting, figuring that out, like how it was going to attach to the beam and making this thing that was like almost half the size of this room, it felt like. Yeah, not quite, but it felt like it.
And there's also a second half to that story, which is when the client sold the house a year later, the client asked Paul to take it back and resell it for them.
Oh, really?
So we took that, we just passed it.
Yeah,
We
there
took
it
that
is.
plaster
Right.
fixture down, shipped it back to New York, and Paul was able to replace it for us,
Oh, nice.
which is, another really strong benefit of a good relationship.
I love this image too, and I love the ceramics on the wall behind too.
Yeah. That wall cabinet, I sold him as well.
Oh, good.
That was a good story. The wall cabinet was Frank
Yeah.
Albini that came out of an important house in Milan.
Yep.
So
And they bought it for their New York apartment originally, and then they sold that and they moved to Texas.
no,
and
this
we
one was always for this Texas house.
Oh, was it? It wasn't in the New York? Okay. There were some things in this house that were repurposed from New York, which was...
A lot of repurposing.
So we've had a love fest here. So let's talk. What are your worst experiences with interior designers or dealers? Or the hook is going to come out and get me off. So I'm assuming that they're not with each other. So
Yeah, hopefully.
I can do a quick one.
Okay.
We early on in my career, we had a nice sized project for ourselves, and we placed an order for a Tommy Parzinger Originals re-edition. We gave the vendor a down payment. We made the final payment, and when it came for delivery, the vendor didn't deliver the piece. She said that it was damaged in shipping. So we waited a month, and the piece didn't come back in, and we reached out again. They said, we're so sorry, they're having production delays. And finally, at some point, months had gone by, our client was infuriated. We went to her showroom in 200 Lex, actually, and she basically was closing shop, never placed the order, and had just pocketed the money for the table. So that was our worst dealer experience of anything.
Maybe I'm regretting that we're going into this realm, but okay, Nicole, do you want to?
You must have an interior design
Oh yeah, what's your worst interior?
story. I have great relationships with all my dealers. No,
I know you do.
I couldn't really think of one, to
That's
be
good.
honest. I mean,
That's good.
we just ordered this commission table, and we went on and on and on with this artist. And we gave them a weight limit because the piece was on a roof deck. And the weight limit is in our purchase order. We said, there's a structural concern. Anyway, the table arrives too heavy, doesn't meet the weight limit, and it's finished on the underside of the top, but not the top. I don't even understand how that can happen. So we're all like, what? So and he was like not willing to make a new one, not willing to refund money, nothing. Like we're kind of on our own. So that's just happened last week.
Oh, wow.
So how did you resolve
This was
it?
therapeutic for you to get this out.
I was like you just have to improvise. We didn't use the top. We used a piece of stone that was on site that we used to clad another room, and we had the crane was already there, lifted the table up there, and we have a table. But I still have to have the conversation with the client that the top is not the top that we commissioned, and figure out financially how to, make them whole. So that's
Some of us are
tough one.
scoundrels, unfortunately.
Yeah. You have a designer one, I'm sure. Not with me.
No.
You have only been kind to me. In thinking about that question, Tony, there is this, again, going back to trust. It's very annoying when a designer goes behind the gallery's back and goes straight to the designer and try to talk to them about buying a piece from them or commissioning a piece from them, completely forgetting that that particular designer or artist has a gallery behind them. In my case, that happens to me twice. Fortunately, my artists and designers are very lovely and loyal, and they called me and told me, Cristina, this is what's going on, and we will not fulfill those orders. But it was very disappointing. But it happens.
Yeah.
But now the client is dead.
And Chris, it's up to you to decide whether Cristina killed them or not.
They called me the eraser.
Yeah.
So I took the white out and he was dead.
That's hilarious.
Yeah, it's true, it happened.
It's true. She is the eraser.
Wow.
Top that, Paul.
I don't think I can. But certainly what Cristina was saying about some designers, going behind your back is always a tough one to swallow because, you feel like you have relationships and I guess that's human nature and some people can't help themselves. But I just, I don't have like a catastrophic one, but, sometimes people are just very intense. And I try to like cover all my bases, but I'm generally pretty laid back. So, sometimes you have a designer just trying to micromanage when you're doing something even as simple as upholstering a bench for them, and that can be very frustrating because they're, climbing on your back and, then you're almost assured something's going to go wrong because they're just paying way too much attention to something that should just be an easy breezy thing. So we have stories like that. I mean, I can remember this one client was buying something that was going to Asia, and I was at a wedding on a Greek island where my phone was not getting reception, and she was calling me, like we kept getting disconnected, and she would not stop calling me. It's like, I'm trying to get to this restaurant. I'm with this wedding. Can we talk about this tomorrow, please? And it was kind of a funny situation, but it's most of my bad designer stories, which aren't that bad, are just that kind of thing.
Yeah, calling you at before 6 a.m. You're at 5:45.
No, not that. Just Yeah, just micromanaging
Right.
sometimes is a little tough.
I want to leave a tiny bit of time in case anyone wants to ask a question, but I want to sort of end on a happier note and maybe ask each of you to tell us what it is that you love about what you do. And who should I call on, or who's dying to answer this one first? Nicole is. Nicole's
I'll
been.
be brief. I love the people that I get to work with and all of you, and so the relationships are very important to me, and the relationships with the makers, and I think education, learning. To me, I feel like I learn something new every day from the people I work with or the craft that I'm seeing, so I never want to walk into a room thinking I know everything. I walk in thinking, what am I going to learn? And this is going to be exciting, and who am I going to meet, and what are they going to bring to me, and what can I, maybe there's something I can offer in return. So I think that learning every day is what is exciting to me.
I think for me it's similar, and also I enjoy very much working with my designers and artists, helping them realize their dreams and learning together, evolving together, and again, having relationships with these very wonderful clients and friends, and trying to make the world a better place.
It's hard not to go back to that it's about the people, meaning, it starts with our clients and our teams that we work with in-house and in our firm, how appreciative we are to work with these amazing people, and the clients. I talk to people when I interview people for our firm, and I always tell them that you're partially in the hospitality business. If you are someone in residential interior design and you don't like working with people and seeing the joy on their face and really trying to bring an amazing experience to the entire thing, then it's probably not the right industry for you. And in addition, the trickle down of everybody we work with, from the galleries to the craftsmen, to the contractors, to the electrician, to the people that rewire, to the people that photograph our homes, every bit of the process is a huge collaboration of hundreds of people that really makes it a special thing to get to do.
As much as I love the people that I get to work with and interact with, and I truly, truly do, I think my biggest joy is the objects themselves and, the history, like the research, the hunting, the restoration, the presenting things that I get still, 30 years later, I still get so excited by the inventory and the pieces I get to show. And that's such I feel so lucky to be able to do that. Even in the worst of times, I never don't look forward to going to work. I love what I do. I love almost everything about it. And I feel very, very lucky. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's sort of a key message, and we haven't really talked specific objects or things. There are, 40,000 really extraordinary objects over there, so you all can get that. But even sort of on Friday when I visited the fair and you walked me through your booth, and Cristina too, just sort of telling me the stories and, the incredible research on this rare piece that just you sort of knew. It's like your Moby Dick. Yeah. So. And the sort of, and I also reminded that whether you're an interior designer of Nicole and Damon's caliber, or you're just somebody walking off the street into these galleries, particularly with Cristina and Paul, but I know a lot of dealers are like this. They have such a wealth of knowledge and are really such nice, interesting, warm people that you should just take advantage of that. You can't, if you go to a museum, you can't really ask the curator, what's behind this thing. But if you walk into their galleries or their booths, you really can ask all sorts of questions and really, as Nicole said, learn something new every day from them. So, and what I love about my job is getting to, to be with folks like you. So I'm also grateful every day and learn something new, and learn a few things new today, including that Cristina, never get on Cristina's bad side. Although I kind of knew that already.
The eraser.
The eraser. Does anybody have a question here? If happy to let you voice you're all New Yorkers, right? So you've got to have opinions and questions. Sometimes people aren't, so that's okay too. Yeah.
What?
Who's your favorite account manager at First Dibs?
Oh.
Mr. AJ.
AJ. For sure. AJ's the man.
You're not going to let it conclude on that sort of advertorial, are you? Come on. Someone has to ask a question with integrity. Okay.
So, in speaking about the relationship between designers and galleries, I feel like with the revolutionary thing that's happening with brands like First Dibs, where the galleries now have kind of a direct pipeline to retail users and, you know, people who might not be able to get in the gallery, you know, people in remote areas that are working on large projects, or how has that affected your relationship with clients? I mean, I imagine clients go on First Dibs as well, so I'm just wondering how that shift that First Dibs has kind of brought into the industry has benefited or, you know, limited things for you.
Do you want to start, or?
No, you know more.
Okay. You know, it's been great in many ways. I mean, you know, nothing's perfect, but First Dibs has certainly brought me people that I don't know that they might have ever found me before. You know, there's a small amount of like my regular clients who reach out to me through First Dibs, but mostly what I hear from First Dibs and things that become serious sales are people I've never worked with before. So it's been, you know, it's been great to see that, and I'm always grateful for that, because yeah, just, you know, have a broader reach. That's wonderful.
I can jump in on something related, is that even on our side, we've reached out to vendors that we've built relationships with that we never would have been able to. So there are, you know, places in Europe that we never would have had these experiences, and they become great vendors. They're people that we have amazing relationships in. They come in and see us. We see them. It's definitely opened up the doors to a much broader reach. And just because we found them or they found us online originally through First Dibs doesn't mean that we can't build really personal, high-quality relationships just the same.
I mean, First Dibs offers unbelievable exposure.
Yeah.
You know, international exposure that otherwise we wouldn't get.
We've gotten projects off First Dibs.
You have?
Yeah.
Yeah, I asked a client who engaged us, you know, how did you hear about us? And she said, through First Dibs. So I know, I was surprised, but that's a client in Europe who scrolls and scrolls and sends me First Dibs every day. She sends me, what about this? What about that? You know, like, that doesn't even fit in your house, but it's beautiful. But yeah, so as an interior designer being featured on First Dibs, it definitely helped us bring in clientele that were not our typical region, or, you know, not even in the US, so that really helped.
These are all nice. I was a little afraid what the answers would be. And now, that question was not a plant, even if it sounds like no. Yeah, anyone else want to ask about First Dibs?
Question in the back?
Yeah, hi. The pandemic changed the way how people shopped. Yes, from going to galleries, from having direct interaction with people, you know, galleries, designers, to make everything more digital and remote. With that, nothing compares to the one-on-one experience and having people seeing things in person and developing personal relationships. I would like to understand how you countered that after the pandemic.
Well, we're all here making those personal connections. So I think after pandemic, travel, you know, really getting out, getting back into the galleries, back to the fairs, back to the museums, and just seeing and reassuring those relationships that we already had and making new ones. So I think we've all been on the road a lot, just trying to remind people of the relationships that we have. But, you know, working remotely has changed work. I mean, a lot of our clients have gotten very comfortable not traveling and not going to galleries. And so we've asked our vendors to send video of a piece, or, you know, we'll do a live Zoom call with an artist in the studio so they can see a piece. So, we've had to improvise and change that a little bit as well, because it's harder to get people to leave their homes for some reason, but they really are comfortable. Can't we just do a Zoom? And that's really hard when you're looking at such beautiful objects with such, care and craft. So it's a balance, for sure.
I had an interesting experience after the pandemic because I'm in a building with many showrooms, and I had taken a second space, and we were just at the tail end of renovating it when the entire world shut down. And so, we were kind of not going in for like the first month and a half, but I was really like chomping at the bit to get my new space, populated with pieces. And I was going in constantly all the time. And as soon as I could get movers to leave their homes, I was bringing stuff in. And so I feel like, I was a very early adapter to trying to reopen the FaceTime. And I was doing a lot more, reaching out digitally as well. But I felt like I was for people who were being a little more adventurous, once the shock of the pandemic kind of wore in a little bit, I felt like I was supplying people with a place to go to, for whoever wanted to come. And so that was really great for me. And so I feel like I took like a month and a half off from being a retail space, and then I just went right back into it. I was a lot more cavalier than a lot of people, but I was fortunate.
I mean, I would say, though, it is a good question the way that clients have become very reliant on Zoom, which in some ways is really good for efficiency, but in other ways there is no substitute for actually seeing pieces when you can see them, especially when if not all clients can see things as clearly, and images look very different on screens than they do in person. So I think it is a good point that our reliance in general on Zoom has changed that game a little bit, and I think there probably are more surprises to people that don't really understand what they're seeing when it comes in if they haven't taken the time to go see them in person.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, in my experience, people still love to come to the gallery. And I think that especially last year, when Salon reopened last year, you could feel the excitement. You could feel the joy behind everybody getting together. Like we're here, we can see these beautiful things, we can experience all these beautiful objects, and we can experience all these different galleries. And I think that connection, you can feel it. That is, the people really wanted to do that and really wanted to see pieces in person, not just Zoom or whatever. It's a different world.
Well, we're so grateful that you all want to see them in person, and you're all here today, and I'm so grateful that you all showed up this morning or this afternoon. So thank you.